were extremely transferable in many places. And that made me so happy that I decided to go through the rest of the recipes, check the backstory of each, and discovered the wonder that Natasha Celmi is. So, Natasha, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Poorna, for having me. And thank you, Kolkata Literary Meet, for having me here as well. It's an honor.
Natasha, uh, you have an extremely deep connection with Kolkata. You have introduced a lot of things to Kolkata. We are going to go into it. But before that, tell me a little bit about the reason the book happened.
The reason the book happens. So this is my book today, my second book, My Mediterranean Table, Bring Home the Flavors. The reason this book happened is, so I'm very much from Calcutta and I've been living around. My husband is Italian, so we spend half our time in Italy and traveling around the Mediterranean. And as the book says, bring home the flavors. You know, there was this line which said, Ghar lao khushiyan. I think it was a Cadbury ad or it was a Titan ad. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with the book, is I wanted to bring home, to my home, which is India, the flavors of the Mediterranean region, which are so beautiful.
So, what about your cooking philosophy? I've been reading this book, and I'm seeing a lot of different things that make me realize that you are probably what is known as the lazy cook. Tell me about it.
Hey, if you're juggling work, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I do want to enjoy life as well. I do not want to be sweating it out in the kitchen. And you know, today, nobody wants to eat dal chawal, nobody wants to eat normal sabzi. So yeah, you want good food. How do we achieve it all? We find a solution of smart cooking or being the lazy cook, where we make do with whatever we have. So my book will probably give you 5 substitutes to every recipe, and you're wondering, what is she talking about? Why can't she be clear? But that comes from practical experience, where we don't always have everything in the house, and life is complicated enough. So if we need to, procure ingredients and make cooking a project, I don't think that's really needed, right? That's why the lazy cook, yes.
But even as a lazy cook, I really like the fact that it kind of encompasses what I would typically call most of the Mediterranean center. And your dishes not only comes from Greece or Syria, but also from other parts that comprise of the whole Mediterranean belt, if I would say. So what would be your particularly favorite cuisine among these, and why so? And if you have a good recipe from that section, then I would like to have your recommendations.
Right, so what comprises the Mediterranean, what we typically call Mediterranean food? We know a bit of meze dips and pita bread, and that's Mediterranean. But if you look at the map, which is there in the book, it starts right from Spain, south of France, Italy, Greece, all around the Levantine region, so Turkey, Syria, down to northern Africa. So it also includes Morocco, Egypt. So they say same, but different. There's something common amongst these countries and their cuisines, but they have their individuality. So what I would say, coming to your question, is what is my distinct? I'm a big fan of Greek. Well, Italian food for me now is like ghar ka khana. Honestly, I don't even go to an Italian restaurant. It's literally ghar ka khana. But there's a lot in Greek, Turkish, even French cuisine, which appeals a lot to our Indian taste buds. You know, all the gratins of France, what we grew up calling vegetable or gratin, is the whole style, different kinds of gratins. Then you go to Greece and Turkey and even south of Italy. My favorite dish, now one thing I've learned is the use of vegetables. So we all in India think European khana hai, non-veg hai. But the Mediterranean region is blessed with the best climate, and they eat a lot of vegetables. And one such vegetable is the boring bengan. Okay? I have to tell you, I have learned to transform bengan or eggplant into the most gourmet dishes. And that is one celebrated vegetable all around. And there's lots of bengan recipes in my book.
I did see a lot of bengan. In my humble opinion, I absolutely loved your recipe of the moussaka because that's one of my personal, one of the dishes that I remember cooking when I was in my teens, and unfortunately the results were eaten by two people who are sitting in the audience and looking at me very
Right.
sternly all of a sudden because they remember how it tasted like. And so I do believe that this is going to give me some better directions.
So those days we had the famous Tarla Dalal books, and I remember my mom also cooking, the Indian continental food, which was much ahead of the times, when we hadn't traveled abroad. So yeah, these recipes here are more authentic, but keeping in mind the Indian palate. I have to tell you, the moussaka is vegetarian in this. And you know what ingredient the sauce uses? Because traditionally moussaka uses meat. Kala masoor dal. Okay, so lentils, what we call kala masoor dal is lenticchie in Italy, lonti in France. And lentils are very celebrated. So I have a moussaka recipe, which I do with black lentils. And it is delicious. And I have been cooking it in Europe right now, and people have loved
You
it.
have been using black lentils to substitute a lot in through your book. I have seen at least 3 other recipes which basically says, oh, but you can also use black lentils. Do
Yeah.
you think legumes are one of your favorite things to cook with?
So legumes are super healthy, and now there's this whole trend towards vegetarianism, veganism, and I have to say, kala masoor dal is used a lot in salads in the Middle East, in Greece also I've seen it, and in Italy as well, in pasta sauces. They have a pasta with lentils. So what we think is dal is only Indian, but the way they cook it differently. But legumes, chickpeas, beans, there's cannellini beans, which I have substituted with nothing else but lobia. So we have cannellini beans, you get them in tins in southern Europe. But in India, I was like, where were we going to get cannellini beans? Well, there's an Indian cousin over here. It's called the lobia. And there's a delicious dip I do called the Greek white bean dip using lobia. And nobody believes it's that boring lobia that's been transformed.
No, but that's again a very cool dish. You said that it was the cousin of hummus. I really liked it in the skirt dalia.
Yeah, I
And,
think we're all done with hummus, so we need
you
to
were
move
like the
on.
cousin of hummus, but it's Greek.
The cooler cousin.
So tell me one thing. What, in your opinion, is the essence of a Mediterranean diet? Because just saying it out loud, there's been so many different diets we have come, and Mediterranean diet was one such quote unquote at one point of time promoted for being healthy because it had low GI, low glycemic index, great
One of the oldest ones historically
one of the
as
oldest
well.
ones. Also, it's something that people are used to eating in that area. So genetics also kind of supports that kind of thing. But given that, how adaptable is the Mediterranean diet in Indian scenario, and how much have you worked to do that?
It's very adaptable because our climate is the same. The Mediterranean region is a very hot region. In summer, it goes up to 40 degrees, way hotter than here. The main thing is they used olive oil, which is a naturally cold-pressed oil. So now the in thing is cold-pressed oils. And the reason olive oil is so healthy is because it is a cold-pressed oil. So you cook with it, you drizzle it over. That's one thing. Lots of vegetables. As I said, it's a hot climate. Lots of vegetables, lots of garlic, again, very healthy. Lots of fruits. So the Middle Eastern use lots of fruits in the salads. There's always a fruit element. And for the Bengali palate, lots of fish.
Yeah, that is very important. And I saw your recipe book is very well, diversified into meat, fish, legumes, veg. But I really love the fact that you also follow what is known as like the Indian dietary ethos, which basically means बहुत सारे vegetables और legumes खा ले फिर उसके बाद protein कुछ मिलने वाला है. That is going to be like the appeal that you're going to get like a piece of fish or a piece of paneer because you have eaten your tinda, your bangan, your
Eat your vegetables,
korla.
yes.
So that being said, Mediterranean diet uses a lot of vegetables.
And a lot of dahi also, I'll tell you. We use dahi and yogurt in our cooking. So yogurt. And their cheeses are soft cheeses. So mozzarella, feta, ricotta. How different is that from our paneer?
It's actually very
In Greece,
similar.
you get halloumi. So I was at my in-laws' place and they were making, oh, we do fresh ricotta today. I'm like, okay, fresh ricotta. It sounds very fancy. Ricotta. and your paneer. But I'm like, they boiled milk and put in lemon, and I'm like, that's how my mom makes, paneer in the house. So you call it ricotta, we call it paneer. We set it a little more. You just keep it fine. And blend an Indian block of Amul paneer in the blender. That's in my book, The Hack for Ricotta. And you have a creamy ricotta. And then ricotta and spinach is a classic combination. Feta and spinach is a classic Greek combination. But what is our Indian combination?
We do have
Palak and paneer.
no, but I
What is
really
the
love.
coincidence?
Okay, so there is one of my favorite things. I really like a spanakopita, which is basically a spinach and ricotta
And feta,
filo pastry pie. But she made a version which is adaptable for lazy home cooks like me, who basically substitute the filo pastry by skipping a lot of this and put the spinach with the rice and make spanaco riso,
So,
which I thought was very fun, really, really fun.
yeah,
Tell
so
me
the
about
same
a little bit of
filling.
it.
So you have leftover palak or just some palak rotting in your fridge. ये खराब हो जाएगा, आज बनाना है. Toss it in a pan with some olive oil and garlic. You have leftover rice. We all have leftover rice. Toss that together. Add a little bit of feta cheese, lots of lemon, garlic, olive oil, and you're sorted.
And that's what I really loved from the moment I started reading this book. See, this is what I love about the when a cook actually starts writing, because they know exactly how difficult it is sometimes to kind of move ourselves to the kitchen and do something. So, how do you deal with that? Do you have times when you don't want to cook? And what inspires you?
So I cook professionally now. I do grumble when I have to cook, and I do live in Germany now, and I don't have my assistant help, my maid. So what was your question? What?
How do you deal with days you don't want to cook, and how do you like go back to the kitchen? Like, what inspires you to go back
So
there?
that's what smart cooking is about. In my book, I tell you what to do with leftovers. I tell you cook extra today, use the salad as a sandwich filling tomorrow. Use it as a wrap with your roti tomorrow. If you're making a sauce, make an extra batch. This sauce tomorrow can be your pasta sauce. Day after tomorrow, toss some veggies or paneer in it. So if I've cooked extra today, I mean, you're cooking like one batch, make a double batch. The effort is the same. Tomorrow is your day off from the kitchen. So it's about managing time, I would say.
And your book has a lot
repurposing.
about leftovers and substitutions. And I am actually one of those people who love the entire concept of substitutions. But do you think that these can kind of take away from the dish as well? Like, how do you use substitutions?
So there's no rules in cooking. Recipe is only a guide, and then you cook with amore, as I've learned from the Italians, with love, with passion, or whatever suits your palate. You are used to eating what you're used to eating. My palate is completely different. So if I don't have basil in the fridge, I'll use parsley. If I don't have parsley, I'd make a delicious coriander pesto with dhania patta. You don't have walnuts, add kaju. So you can make do with whatever you have in the fridge. All the recipes or any recipe, you add jalapenos to it, it becomes Mexican. You add a little bit of masala to it, it becomes Indian. So I think every recipe can be adapted and suited to the ingredients you have available and to the food and the flavors you feel like eating at that point. And I do, modify my own recipes.
So, do you have any cooking routine? Like, do you like to do certain things first? Do you like to not do certain things later?
I like to multitask. And for that, I use the cooking hob. I'm literally like an octopus in the kitchen, and I do cooking classes, and I do tell people that use your time. Don't just stand there and look at something cooking on the pan. So use the oven. Turn the oven on, start roasting your meats, roasting your vegetables. Cook 2-3 hobs together. Do a fresh element, so you don't need the hob at the same time, and you have some fresh elements and fresh dishes. So I would say 1 hour in the kitchen, and you should have at least 3 dishes ready. That's efficient use of time.
That's also really impressive.
No, it's important. Otherwise, you're going to be sweating it out, and what's the point?
Before I ask the next question, I know I've been like rapid firing you for a while now. Let me go ahead and talk about your interest in another form, which is dessert. This book has a pretty good dessert section. And I cannot help but talk about a pretty popular place called Mamma Mia. And
Thank
one
you.
young woman who had decided to introduce gelatos to Kolkata. And This is one of my actually most cherished memories from university. So I was studying in Jadavpur and we had to go to British Council to study and work at the same time. And my best friend Sutishmita and I would actually save the money that we would have to pay for the auto and all that. And we would walk down all the way to Mamma Mia from Jadavpur, get ourselves one Sicilian lemon and one vanilla, split
You
it.
still remember the name of the
Absolutely.
flavor.
Absolutely. It was like the people, they got bored after seeing us after a while. They were like, "Ah, फिर से आ गए." So we would look at them and they were like, ah, Sicilian lemon खाने आ गई ना? हाँ मैं तो. Sorry. So, but
That's very nostalgic.
that was, and that also gives me a very interesting question that I've been wanting to ask you. If you were to launch it today, let's say, relaunch Mamma Mia, what new and exciting flavors of gelato are you bringing to town? I mean, this is me hopeful.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, I have to tell you, a lot of my team and people behind Mamma Mia are here in the audience today, including my family and the people who worked with me and built the Mamma Mia brand. So yeah, good going on that, everyone. They do say it takes a village to raise a kid. It takes a village to, create a company as well. So coming back, today it's completely different. This was way back in 2005 when we started off. Today, I think people are a lot more exposed. At that time, there was no social media. Internet was also still very basic. I think people want to have what's internationally available. So I think a lot of gourmet flavors, stuff that's off the beaten path. Savory ice cream is big now in the West. I do a lovely Parmesan ice cream with balsamic vinegar, avocado ice cream. I do this for all my dinner events now. So savory ice cream could be something trendy, fusion with Indian flavors. We used to do a lot of Nolen Gur after a point, so I would bring in an Indian element and an Italian element. So I think more adventurous flavors would be interesting.
That the Parmesan ice cream just made me hungry. So we are going to now go into a different direction, which is the method and technique in the kitchens. Okay, so this I know is interesting because most of her work is very, very substitutable. And the one thing that I absolutely love in the book is the fact that if you do not have an oven, at times it's difficult to use anything except the oven.
And traditional kitchens in India do not have ovens.
But you have been able to make a lot of like substitution. I really enjoyed one which was this spaghetti muffins.
Yeah.
And that's a fritta spaghetti, if I'm not. I'm
Frittata,
sorry,
the
very
spaghetti.
sorry.
No, Italian
Forgive
spaghetti
my.
muffins, yeah.
Yes, forgive my Italian. But tell me a little bit about the traditional recipes that you have had in this book, and how did you manage to kind of is there stories behind some of them? So I would like to know that. Like you have made substitutions with mushrooms for beef. You have made certain places. You have made a conscious decision that you're going to use certain ingredients here, and sometimes you have been extremely strict to the traditional version of it, and sometimes you have made your own like changes. Like you have said, okay, I am going to make this dish in this way because it's more appealing. So how does that work? Like, and is there any interesting story around a recipe of yours that we would like to know?
So, two things. One is the final recipe is based on my taste buds, stuff that I have cooked in the kitchen, and I have either kept it original or adapted it. And I have felt if I like it this way, I think, people around me would do so as well. So to come to the spaghetti muffins, originally, that's the modern version. The original version, again, Italy was a very traditional kitchen and traditional country. So they do it in the pan. The story behind is, my husband's a very good cook, by the way, and that is typical picnic food. When you have leftover spaghetti, you toss it with an egg and cheese, put it in the pan, and it becomes like a spaghetti omelette. I think we also do something similar with chawal, maybe.
Yeah, we make it with Maggie.
With Maggie. So there you go. Same but different. We're all connected.
Yeah, Maggie is not saved anywhere. We have understood this.
So that I modified, made it into muffins in the oven, in muffin tins. I have kids, so I found that more appealing for kids.
What's something that your kids absolutely love that when you make and they will come into the kitchen and say, are you making this?
Yeah, my kids are pretty fussy, but so what I do is, well, any kid likes French fries, right? And I'm totally against frying. Being in the food industry, you know what goes on in the kitchens in restaurants, and I believe me, the oil is not changed for days, yeah? And jalawa tel is probably the worst thing. I've heard the term in my home kitchens. So I roast everything. So roasted French fries was basically aloo ko kato, thoda sa tel dalo, oven mein dalo. Yeah, so the whole glory of the French fries has come down to aloo ko oven mein dal do. There are a lot of healthy techniques. My kids, of course, love Italian food. Now that we live abroad, they like Indian food a lot as well. So I do a good chole. Now I'm doing a lot of Indian food, by the way, at home. I think it's all about context. When we lived in India, we liked European, Western flavors. Now that I live abroad, I do cook a lot of Indian food.
And a lot of the recipes are extremely children friendly as well. Like, do you involve your kids in the cooking action or do you do it all your own?
No, I do it myself. I need my peace. I can't have kids running around.
So you're more of a like, I'm going to do everything on my own and
Yeah,
nobody
kids'
touches
time
anything.
is kids' time. My time is my time. And as I said, I need to be efficient in the kitchen and not deal with more mess and more chaos. So no, kids and cooking don't go together in my house.
So after you started cooking, how long did it take for this to kind of come together, the book?
This is my second book, actually. So cooking, I've been cooking since years now, last 10 years. But I will tell you, I'm not one of those, my mum is here. I haven't learned from my mums and grandmums. So I didn't know how to cook till 10 years ago. And that also happened by default. And just to tell you how I got into it, so when I was with Mamma Mia, I used to go to Italy for work. And I tasted flavors of food and which I had never tasted before. This was back in 2005. And I would come back, and that time restaurants were limited. We didn't have food blogs, we didn't have YouTube. But the thing is, I was craving those flavors. And you know, they say a way to a man's heart is through the stomach. I had no man in my life. I needed to satisfy my own stomach. And I wouldn't want to eat, you know, roti sabzi at home. And I'd be like, okay, but I didn't know how to create those flavors, and I was seeking it out. So I had the desire to cook. I didn't know how to cook. It was a disaster. So one thing leads to another. So the desire to satisfy my own stomach and my own cravings is what led to, you know, cooking.
Is there any one here who kind of directed you or anyone who's your cooking inspiration?
Not anyone here, I'm sorry to say, because I got inspiration watching TV shows.
Who's your favorite?
MasterChef Australia. Come on.
I
what
think
year?
you
Way
mentioned
back.
Columba is somewhere
In the
about,
book.
yes.
So there was one recipe that I saw. So you can see how, you know, seriously I was watching the shows and things have stuck in my mind like 15 years later. I think the TV shows, there was Nigella Cooks, there was MasterChef Australia, 9 o'clock every day. I would finish dinner, you know. And then just eating, traveling. I think travel is a big teacher. So I love to travel, and for me, travel is about which restaurant and the local cuisine. And I would eat something, and I'd be like, right, how do I recreate this back in my own kitchen? So yeah.
And in there, is there any ingredient that has stumped you? You've been like, oh my God, how do I cook with this?
There are lots of ingredients that have stumped me, with new ingredients. As you travel, I have to say I am discovering a lot of Indian ingredients now as well, which is lovely. But yeah, a lot of ingredients over time, you know, you learn to cook with.
Tell me a couple of them if you can, Mane. Do you think some ingredients are so overhyped that they are just not worth it, worth the effort?
I think avocado is very overhyped.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
I don't know why, but avocado, there's nothing in an avocado.
Oh my God. I'm glad that my sister's not here. She's the resident avocado person. And thanks to her, my entire family had to go through an entire avocado period where she would constantly buy avocado and make us go through the different kinds of uses it had.
Yeah, no, avocado is very overhyped.
And is there an ingredient you absolutely love cooking with? Like, is there any go-to ingredient that you have?
So garlic, for me, is indispensable in my kitchen. That's again something I learned because when you don't have rich masala, when you do Mediterranean Italian food, garlic is, I have a jar of garlic paste, fresh garlic paste that I make. Also the French, they use a lot of garlic, and I've been using a lot of butter now, I have to say. Butter does change. It's like ghee in India. So while olive oil is there, but the addition of butter to any cuisine, it makes a big difference.
Like butter makes everything better.
Yes.
That is the
So I
word.
learned that from the French, I have to say. Butter, butter, butter. Yes.
I actually remember once going to, I think, Toulouse, and we had this whole dinner planned for us, and my friend was there, and she was taking me around. And we entered this lovely place, very beautiful French restaurant, amazing food, and the French butter. I think I ate the entire pot of butter without doing much to it. Like I did not even bother slathering it on bread because why bother? This butter is so creamy and they whip it. How nice. So one of the great things about this book, and by the way, it's available outside for those who you know, and she's available for giving us a lot of autographs. So please, this book I thoroughly enjoyed also because of one added reason. Everything is very cup friendly. Like you kept on the measurements very homemaker friendly, or I would say because they're all half a cup, full cup, yeah, and it's also very forgiving. So a little that kind of also shows a little bit about your cooking philosophy. That your philosophy is pretty like okay, theek hai, chalo, ho jayega, don't worry about it.
So I've read a lot of cookbooks. I have a lot of cookbooks, but I've used only like 2 or 3 of them. And I think that goes for a lot of you. You know, we have shelves of books, and we only end up using a couple because I don't find them user friendly. In India, we don't all use weighing machines. So cups is also very Indian, very British. I have to say, I work in Europe now, and they don't know what cups are. They're like with their measuring scales. Yeah, so I had to keep it user friendly. As I said, everything in this book is literally me cooking from it and bringing it to your kitchen. I also want to point out a unique feature of this book, and that is QR codes. So keeping ahead with technology, yes, today technology is so important. A book also has to stay ahead with technology. And I think it's the first time in India where a cookbook, many recipes have QR codes. You scan it and you get a supporting video. So you have the recipe, you could really see the texture and how the dish should turn out, and so can your cook.
Also a lot of really easy hacks, and there is an amazing cheats feta hack which I am going to read out from, because she starts with, at the risk of being damned by the Greeks and Cypriots for calling this feta, I am sharing a reliable hack for a cheats feta. While real Greek feta is made from sheep or goat's milk, my version is cost effective and does this job when you want to save yourself the hassle of going shopping. Besides, it's fresh and preservative free. And the recipe is actually ridiculously simple. It goes like this. Make chana, which is basically a creamy ricotta. And then add a teaspoon of salt while blending it. Taste, add more salt if required. Put it in a sealable container and drizzle extra virgin olive oil. Wait for 3 hours in the fridge. You're done. And I love this so much. I really was so enjoying this book. And when I got the
I
book,
might get killed by some chef, but yeah.
So I was so enjoying this book, and I was reading through it, that I actually made this. And that's also now how I know it works. Because I had real feta. I think there's a brand
that's
called
interesting.
Dilecta.
Did you? Oops.
My sister's a huge feta freak, so we get feta at home, a lot of different cheeses at home. She loves a lot of different good cheeses. So we recently got some lovely ash-covered feta, which is preserved there, and we actually did the whole test because like, chalo, isko dekh ke, kha ke dekhte hain ki is it anywhere similar? And believe me, I was so interested that it kind of nailed it. Kind of went like about 80%
काम
of the
चल
way.
जाता है ना?
हाँ, like if
Indian
you're putting
जुगाड़
it-
तो हो जाता
like
है
if
ना?
you're putting it in a recipe or a dish, it's very easy. Like you will be fooled. And I was very happy to see that, because that makes all these recipes price-wise also very low. And that also is one part of the cooking philosophy that she has, where the ingredient substitution are also extremely, sensitive to prices and Indian availability. So when you were going through and you're doing the recipes, was that one of the factors you were having in mind?
Yes, you do not need to spend a lot to eat well. Yeah, so the whole thing that we think having international cuisine or, gourmet food, we need to spend a lot of money. And that is where my work steps in, that, hey, it's not expensive, it's not complicated, It's really stuff that is just in your kitchen. I also run a home, and I do have to manage budgets as well. So yes, it is very cost effective and using whatever is in your nearby kinara dukan, you know.
Apart from Italian and Greek, you have also had a lot of food from the African countries. And what are your opinion about the food there? And tell me a little bit about that section.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on this. So northern, as I said, Mediterranean also includes northern Africa, so Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia. It's a very unexplored cuisine. If you know that, you've heard of tagine. The latest thing is now harissa. Harissa is a spicy chili paste that comes from there. I've explored another sauce called chermoula. That again is a hot country. They use spices, by the way. I will tell you, spices in India are not originally Indian. They were brought by traders and the Arabs. So spices are used a lot in the Middle East and in Northern Africa. So they do stews. They do vegetarian stews, meat stews, they do salads, harissa. It's a lovely condiment to use for your kebabs and your marinades. So I did explore the cuisine of that region as well, which I thought would be very appealing.
Yeah,
for
so
our,
there are very interesting spice blends there.
Yes.
Is there any particular spice blend you are a fan of?
The harissa. So I do a harissa paste, and I make a jar and I keep it in the fridge. And it's nothing but Kashmiri lal mirchi. You soak that, it gets pulpy, some roasted capsicum, a bit of cumin powder, and you blend it all together as per the recipe. And it's your marinade, it's your dipping sauce. You know, like a little spicy sriracha sauce, but with Asian, with Middle Eastern flavors.
One addition to this
Yes.
is if it is like, let's say, one part of this is definitely the spicy harissa and things like that. But if you are to go for one particular cooking technique in the North African field, and you mentioned the tagine, but there are so many diverse ways and so many different things that North African food offers.
Yeah.
Do you think that's criminally underrated?
So I haven't delved very deep into specifically North African food. It's just a few flavors. I wouldn't be able to say too much about that. It is underrated. They use, I think they also use coal in the tagine. What we use are earthen pot. We make in the handi, we make biryani. It's very similar. So they use the tagine, which is also earthen cookware, and you put your vegetables and meat in that. And it's usually over an open fire. So a lot of similarities with cooking in earthenware, yeah, okay. Which was traditionally in India as well, of course.
Before, we are just going to look at the time once and realize that we don't have a lot left. But before we open this panel up for the hopefuls who would be asking some questions, I'm assuming. Before that, I would like to ask you a few last questions. The first one being, you have had a lot of cooking inspirations in the last 10 years. You have really developed a cooking style, done a lot of work to kind of figure out your cooking, how do I put it, your cooking style in general, and then implement it. You wrote your first book, I think, 3 years ago.
Yeah, Fast, Fresh, Flavorful came out right in the middle of lockdown and COVID, yes.
And that was actually something I read because back during that time, I was told that these books you should read because they are fast recipes. Yes. And it's also very nutritious, easy. So tell me about how that book also came along. How did you, how the writing process worked for you? Tell me a little bit of that.
So I'm not a writer by profession. I'm actually a business student. I'm not a chef by profession. So yeah, you can change and you can diversify professions as you go along the way. I see a lot of school children here. So yeah, that's a message for you. I just felt I wanted to express and put, you have the website, you have YouTube, you have Instagram. And people were asking me, ye recipe kahan hai, wo recipe kahan hai. I'm like, why don't I just compile it all and have it in one book that you can refer to? And that book, trust me, it came out during lockdown, 2020. It did save a lot of marriages, I do have to tell you that. Because as you can see, my work is suitable for beginners, so kids, teenagers. Men started cooking. I had lots of guys that time saying, oh, I'm trying this recipe today, how do I do it? So I think it did save a lot of marriages, and that was also the success of the book because everyone was cooking something new from the book. So fast, fresh, flavorful. That really is my motto. And I think that's what's worked throughout as well.
And in this book, if I am to ask you what are your 3 favorite recipes, then what are they going to be? And I know one of them needs to be a Bengal recipe. We have already established the Bengal supremacy. But apart from that, you do have quite a few nice desserts in the recipe, so many starters, a great number of really simple and actually storable salads. That's very important because I have realized salads are something that I do not want to eat and therefore I push it in the back of the fridge. But you have made salads which are substituting foxtail millet. Nah, they're substituting couscous with foxtail millets and things like that. So what's your salad philosophy again? And three favorite things from your...
So I was just talking about salads. I had an event in Ahmedabad yesterday. So salad was not traditionally part of our Indian cuisine. And I find that to be the most, like, I have friends, I have family. The most stressful thing is salad. Kaise banaye aur kaun sa salad banaye? Salad for me growing up was tomato, kheera, gol kaat do, or a kachumber salad. So the salads are big in the Mediterranean region, again being a hot country, and grain-based salads. So they do quinoa, I've used millets here because that's an Indian substitute for couscous, but you get couscous in all kinds of sizes. You have rice of all colors in all kinds of sizes. You have more grains like spelt, farro. So a grain salad is really a good one because a salad should be filling. It's cold. It does not have to have leafy lettuce because lettuce is what you cannot preserve it till the next day. It needs a protein. So any kind of, if you're vegetarian, any kind of beans, paneer. If you're non-veg, then you add some chicken to it, add some prawns to it. And then you add the fresh vegetables, you add a dressing, a fresh dressing with lemon, olive oil. So it's not so complicated, and the salads are very popular in my book because we want to eat salads today and we just don't know how to make salads. And yes, durable salads, so less of leafy elements and more of grains and proteins.
And I really like, the second part of the first part of the question was, what are your 3 favorite dishes from this book? Because I know that one is going to be a Bengal recipe, but what are the other 2?
So it's a very nice eggplant rolls, which I fill with ricotta and spinach, which is nothing but paneer. Crumble the paneer and palak and add a nice tomato sauce and bake it. That's the eggplant rolls. I do a lot of the appetizers. There's a Spanish. We didn't talk about Spain. So Spanish tapas is in the book, and a patatas bravas is a classic if you've been to Barcelona, Madrid, the tapas bars. It's nothing but roasted potatoes or fried aloo with a really nice spicy sauce, a tomato and mayonnaise sauce. And I make that all the time for all my parties. It's easy as well. So patatas bravas, the eggplant, and if you want a dessert, the tiramisu. If you get the book, try the tiramisu. It's my signature one I've been making for the last 25 years. And I learned it in Italy when I went to cooking school in Italy. So yeah.
May I ask a bad question now?
Sure.
Is this the same tiramisu we get to eat at a certain place in Kolkata? Because
which place?
No, tiramisu, I think at one point of time was also available in Mamma Mia.
Yeah, of course. Then it would be the same one.
Yes.
Then it would be the same one.
I am assuming that this is the same one. And this is not a trade secret. Then if you read this book, and again, we are going with this. If you read this book, you might get to know the secrets of the Mamma Mia tiramisu. So with that being a very hopeful question to Natasha, now the last question I'll ask before I open the panel up for the... how difficult was the making process of this book? I saw the beautiful pictures. And by the way, the pictures are one of the best parts of this book. I actually was so hungry at 3 o'clock in the morning. Look at this. It is not fair. Really, like, I kept on looking at these pictures and I was like, really?
Very nice.
3 o'clock in the morning, this is what I get to see and not get to eat? So unfair. But the pictures are incredibly beautiful. Panay, did you take, like, how did these pictures happen? Like, it must have taken you a lot of time to cook and do that.
So I will first mention that this book is not just a cookbook. It combines travel, culture, and food. A lot of people have told me that, I don't cook, but I love reading the book. And as you said, it's a beautiful read. You learn a lot about cultures. I've talked about origins of dishes because I've gone into history. So it's a beautiful read. Coming to the pictures, I'm also a food stylist. So yes, there's a lot of work. Of course, the dishes were cooked. Some dishes are actually been cooked. Some dishes are dummy dishes. It did take 10 seatings, 10 sessions with the photographer, and I cooked all the food, styling, and yes.
No, they're beautiful. I absolutely enjoyed and how long did the book take, like from start to finish, if you are
Three
going to
years.
3 years?
Well, not constant work, but when you write, as a writer, you have a thought. You're somewhere you experience, and you also know. Or maybe at night, the words come to my mind. So you start jotting it down. Then you come back to work on it. So over 3 years, I always knew there was something I wanted to put together into a final book. So there are a lot of pictures, personal pictures from my holidays. So I'm, the photographer, the family has walked ahead, and I'm busy clicking pictures, and suddenly I've lost the family. So things I've collected over 3 years, keeping in mind this book.
Is there any dish that you have eaten and then you've thought, I'm going to recreate it and then come back home and made it and it's in this book? Like you've eaten in a restaurant or a
Yeah, so
fancy
the
restaurant or
spaghetti
something like
with,
that?
so I've also included my father-in-law's recipe, by the way. The spaghetti
Yes.
with seafood. That's a classic Southern Italian dish and made in my home, and I actually took the recipe from my father-in-law. There's lots of dishes that I have eaten elsewhere and, recreated it back. So, yeah.
Uh, so now we are going to go into the second part of this particular scene, very short, and there are people already raising their hands. So the first one will come from Sanjana, who has raised her hand very sweetly. Also, we are very glad that this is not raining today so far, and fingers crossed for the rest of it.
Hello, hi.
Hi, Sanjana.
Hello, my name is Sanjana, and I'm also a student of the culinary arts and I do events. I'm also an avid traveler, and I love the Mediterranean cuisine. And we don't have anything like that in Calcutta, just a few dishes in like different restaurants. But would you ever consider opening a Mediterranean joint in Calcutta or something like that?
Yeah, the amount of
I have my team here. Everyone was behind Mamma Mia.
see, this is literally what I was thinking the entire time. Thank you for voicing this, okay? Because I was thinking, my God, these look so nice, but at the same time, I would like to go to a restaurant and eat all of this and save myself the trouble. But this is so cool. Do you want to?
So, there was a reason I sold my company and moved on in life. It is a lot of work to have a restaurant. I have been doing pop-up dinners. So maybe I should plan a pop-up dinner in Calcutta at some restaurant and let you guys know. I do have 2 kids, so I'm also juggling family life, so I'm not sure about a full-time restaurant. But let's be in touch, and yeah, I'm sure you can have a taste of my food soon.
That sounds like a plan. Like a pop-up here, I think we have multiple contenders for that. Yes, please. The beautiful lady in red, please.
Thank you. Hi, chef. I'm Shivanki. I'm also a pastry chef. I love traveling, as you said. And I have one question for you. That is, a lot of restaurants open up in Calcutta, but they're unable to sustain themselves. So what do you think is going wrong? Because I know a lot of restaurants in Delhi and Bombay, they don't face this problem. Why Calcutta?
Management is very important. I speak from experience, and the personal involvement of the owner or the chef. Maintaining consistency in the food. I would also say that you have to keep innovating new stuff because your clients get bored and they will move on. At Mamma Mia, we would have a new flavor every week. And the whole idea was people will come and say, Naya kya hai? So constant innovation, proper management, consistency in the food, marketing also. It's a whole package that makes a company or a restaurant run. So yeah.
Uh, anyone? Oh, Shomini, please go ahead.
Hi, great to have both of you together on stage today. This is a question for you, Natasha. Again, coming back to Indian or Kolkata, the palette here, and the local vegetables, because I am a sustainability person myself now. How do we indigenize, or, what local vegetables besides aubergine can we use? You know,
Kumra, kumra, pumpkin,
okay.
al
And so,
aloo.
okay, okay,
There's a pumpkin gnocchi in my dish.
okay.
Pumpkin is used a lot. We do pumpkin risotto. That was in my first book. So pumpkin would be a very good dish. You do a pumpkin sauce also with pasta, pumpkin soup.
Because most of us here hate the summer vegetables.
No, but one thing I really appreciated from reading her book was that most of the things, like literally 90% of the things, are, if, and I have gone through the entire book, so I'm saying it, and also bear in mind I'm a food writer, and therefore I have probably more things in my pantry and fridge than you guys. But I would still say, even if I wasn't, and I was a normal housewife, I'll still have 70 to 75% of the ingredients in this recipe in my kitchen, and the rest of it I can just get from the wet market. It's not difficult, because the best part about her recipes that I found was that every single one of them is adaptable for the Indian kitchen. And that sensitivity, a lot of chefs and a lot of cooks do not have, do not come with. But as a reader, when I was reading her book, and believe me, I have read through God knows how many cookbooks, and so it's very difficult for me to like a book, and for that
Wow,
I have
thank
been
you.
yeah, I've been yelled at for that, but that's okay. I actually really enjoyed it, and if you look at the way the recipes are done, and this is why I want to talk about it, because this makes a lot of sense. This is a pan tossed veggie millet. It's like one of the random recipes I have picked up, okay? But if you look at it, you have been given very clearly the prep time, the cooking time, and if you look at it, there are so many options and so many different things that you can add. If you don't have, let's say the first thing that she says is, if you don't have couscous, use foxtail millet, which is extremely sustainable and something that is extremely familiar. And in middle, it was kind of going away from the Indian kitchen, but it has made a huge comeback, the millets. And things like that. If I open any recipe here, the best thing that I see is every single one is adapted to the Indian kitchen.
Talking about millets, all the salads we talked about, bajra, jowar. I've been making salads with bajra, or making, instead of rice dishes and continental dishes, you just cook bajra, you cook jowar. And people love it. And they're like, what grain is this? And I did this at a dinner in Bangalore a few years ago, and they couldn't believe it was bajra, and bajra is like a traditional Indian thing. Talking about vegetables, also, I told you kumra, you can use spinach. All the sags can be used in place of spinach. So I think all the sabji can be. Aloo, of course. So yeah.
Also spinach, a lot of spinach.
Polenta, by the way, it's a North Italian grain. You must have heard of polenta. It comes from corn. I've made a dish here which is originally a Venetian polenta squares. I've used suji.
No, because semolina
It's the
and
same
polenta
texture.
are very similar. It's the same texture, just with different flours. So one is cornmeal and the other one is wheat. So it's not very different. And the best, again, I am not exaggerating when I say this. This book is absolutely a worthwhile keep for a busy cook, because this kind of breaks down a lot of things, gives you a lot of options to work with. And that probably is the reason why I love the book so much. If
Any
there
more
is any other
questions?
question, in that case, we are at the end of our session. Would you like to add some final thoughts?
Final thoughts? Yeah, if you guys are keen on a bit of travel, culture, and food, do get your hands on this book. The reason a writer writes a book is not for my own satisfaction, it's not for money, it's for the pleasure of the reader and for readers to benefit from it. So I think you will enjoy it a lot. If you want to connect with me beyond this, I'm very active on Instagram. So just look up Natasha Celmi and we can be in touch and chat more about everything food.
And with that, we come to a wrap of our very first session of 25th of January. We are on for 2 more days, 26th and 27th. I have been firmly told we do not have Sunday this time, which is very sad. But her books are available at the bookstore. You guys should rush there and pick some up. Thank you so much for joining us here. Thank you so much, Natasha, for writing such a wonderful book and giving me the opportunity to review that. I really appreciated it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Poorna. And thank you, Kolkata Literary Meet, for having me here. And thank you for being such a lovely audience. It was a pleasure.